So the Trump administration's aggressive immigration crackdown has sparked protests across the United States, especially after the fatal shooting of a woman by an ICE agent in Minneapolis. For more on this, we're joined today by An Jun-seong, an attorney in South Korea. Mr. An, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So the Trump administration's immigration crackdown has sparked protests across the country, especially after the shooting in Minneapolis. It's now intensifying scrutiny of ICE use of deadly force. So can ICE agents legally use force or detain U.S. citizens?
Well, as a matter of law, Immigration and Customs Enforcement doesn't have the authority to detain or arrest or remove U.S. citizens for immigration purposes. ICE's statutory authority is limited to the enforcement of federal immigration law as applied to non-citizens. Therefore, any detention of a U.S. citizen by ICE, even if temporary, raises serious constitutional issues under the Fifth Amendment protection against unreasonable seizure. With respect to this, the use of force, ICE agents are bounded by the same constitutional standard, and which govern all federal enforcement officers. First, use of force may be objectively reasonable under circumstances, and second, the use of a deadly force is legally justified only when an agent has reasonable belief that there is an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm to the agent or to others. So deadly force may not be used solely to effectuate an arrest or to prevent flight, such as in this case. And when force is used against a U.S. citizen outside this narrow legal parameter, it may expose the government, here in this case the federal government, and individual agent to internal discipline and civil liability in some cases and criminal investigation. The central legal issue is that whether the force employed was necessary, proportional, and consistent with the constitutional requirements.
I see. So can the ICE agent who shot Renee Good in Minneapolis be prosecuted? What charges might he face?
Well, at this stage, there are ongoing, federal and state investigation into the, fatal shooting of, it happened in Minneapolis last week. And multiple inquiries, including the FBI and local prosecutors, are underway, but no charging decision have not yet been announced. But however, from a legal standpoint, prosecution is not impossible, but it faces significant procedure and constitutional hurdles. Because under the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution, federal agents generally enjoy immunity from state prosecution for the action taken within the scope of their official duties. Means that a state criminal case could be removed to the federal court if the agent asserts that his conduct was authorized by the federal law and he conducted in furtherance of such official function. So to proceed the prosecution, prosecutor would need to show that agent action was objectively unreasonable outside the scope of his unlawful authority or the clearly unlawful under the constitutional standard. The potential charge could range from manslaughter to the more serious homicide offenses under state law if the evidence supported that the use of deadly force was not justified. In addition, regardless of criminal liability, the victim's family may pursue civil claims for damages under federal civil rights statutes if they can show a violation of constitutional rights.
I see. And while that's happening, the Trump administration is also awaiting a ruling from the Supreme Court on tariff policies. Now, there have been speculation that it would be issued on Friday, but it seems to have been delayed, and it's now expected to come out on January 14th. Could you just explain what exactly is at stake, and how do you think the ruling will play out?
Well, the main legal issue is the legality of broad tariff, which had been imposed by Trump administrations. And at this moment, it's not clear when exactly the U.S. Supreme Court comes out with the decision. However, when it does come, the decision will address two specific issues. The first, whether the administrations can use the provision under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to levy the tariffs. And second, if not proper, whether and how much the U.S. will have to reimburse those importers who already have paid the duties. In my opinion, that U.S. Supreme Court would grant limited powers under the IEEPA to the Trump administration and thereby require only limited repayment of tariffs.
I see. And what happens after the ruling? What if the court rules that the tariffs are illegal?
Well, that's a very interesting question because if it happens, right, if the court find it is illegal or not proper under the statute, federal statute, means that they have to reimburse that importers about whatever the payment, their tariff payment. However, there's still a question that even if it's found illegal, and that the Trump administration will try to find Plan B actions, basically means that they will find other federal law to keep the status quo, right? That's what they're saying, according to the U.S. media. And also, they might delay the payment, actual repayment, the schedule, so that maybe the time will be significantly much longer to receive it. So that's the issue. And then, but in terms of domestic politics in United States, maybe some ruling against Trump administration is not good sign for the Republican Party and Trump, President Trump. And internationally, however, trading partners such like Korea, well, you don't have much choice because that we know that the Trump administration will find Plan B or Plan C to maintain the status quo in this moment. So I guess we have to wait and see what really happening and take it from there.
Right, we'll have to see how that goes. All right, thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.